are live. It says live. I'm Sylvia from Walkabout Canine Consulting. I hope you join me tonight. I thought I would talk about dog parks. I see a lot of stuff going on with dog parks, so nobody's on here right now, but I did want to talk about it. I see a lot of questions. I see them becoming really popular in my area, and I thought I would go over some of my insights as a dog owner and a professional. Hi, Heinrich. Thanks for showing up. So, these might not be something that's applicable in your neck of the woods where you live. I live in Canada, and they are very much a thing in Canada and the United States. Simply because I know many countries, I know most of the UK, there are no leash laws. Heinrich, I don't know what it's like in Sweden if you have leash laws, but dogs have a lot. I like to see this in. Um, so a lot of dogs have a lot of freedom in a lot of different countries, and of course in the countries where dogs are still roaming the streets for sure have a lot more freedom, but unfortunately they don't have those freedoms where we live, and owners are, or I mean, we have started dog parks. They've been around now for Canada was probably a little bit behind the United States, but they've been around for at least 20 years or so. And essentially, my understanding is that they were initially started to provide a legal place for you to take your dog off leash. Because many municipalities frown upon your dogs running free. When I was a kid, there were no leash laws. I guess that's how the pet explosion started. Dogs kind of ran free. I think there were a lot less problems then. Um, yeah, used to be as well. Some municipalities here, I'm not sure if that still is a thing. I've moved around a lot, and certainly a lot of changes have happened. It used to be that if your dog was within a 6 foot range off leash, it was still considered under your control, but I don't think that is anymore. Like I say, when I was growing up, there was no such thing as leash laws. Dogs had a lot more freedom. I think there were a lot less issues. Maybe not so much in regards to overpopulation, but that's a debatable thing because we tend, yeah, anyways, that's a different subject. So I thought I would just go over. I wrote an article a long time ago about dog parks, and essentially I called them the good, the bad, and the ugly about dog parks. I think they're getting uglier, so I don't know if anybody saw the post that I shared. I didn't really write much about it except that it was going to be part of our next topic. It was actually a picture of a dog who sustained some bite marks at a dog park. So there are a lot of good and bad perceptions about dog parks. I see there's more misunderstanding of dog parks that are happening of late. Um, so, like I say, I'm going to share my personal view as a dog owner and as well as a professional, and seeing, the other side of when owners start having struggles with their dogs as a result of using the dog park too much. Um, so I have visited a lot of dog parks throughout the United States and Canada, and some I have really loved, and some my dogs and I were just not a fan of. So I probably haven't been to a dog park in a really long time. Let's see, she is just over 8. So I'm trying to think. when she was young if I ever went to a dog park with her and the other dogs that I had. Like I say, I often describe dog parks as the good, the bad, and the ugly. One thing that's escalating in Europe is the authorities got it easier to seize your dog. Yeah, that's interesting. So I'm not. Hi, Ava. Thanks for joining. I don't know if seizing dogs here is allowed. Your dog can be taken into quarantine if there's a dog bite. So not sure. Seizing. So in Canada, and I think it's the same in the United States, but under the eyes of the law, dogs are property. So I don't think they can just seize them here. I should ask my husband. He's a lawyer. Um, so, like I say, um, I have visited a lot of dog parks. Not everyone, but I visited a lot. I think some of them are really cool. There are some really great dog parks. My favorite ones have always been those that have large open spaces. I've even been to dog parks that are not fenced in, believe it or not, which was never a problem for me because I am always striving to teach my dogs to be reliable off leash. If I have one that isn't, then they drag a long line. But it's really cool that we can have these spaces where our dogs are off leash. And I've actually lived in areas where they're not just parks, but they're actual trails in the wilderness that are legally off, leash spaces. So I think that's pretty cool as well. And we don't see enough of those. There are areas that have them, and I think it's really cool. And you know, it's a really cool place for our dogs to go walk, explore, and sniff. If that's what their preference is, instead of hanging out with other dogs and people. And yeah, there's dogs that really enjoy playing with other dogs. And yeah, you're right. There are a lot of problems among dog owners in dog parks. I agree. They seize 500 to 1,000 dogs a year. That's really crazy. Um, that's really crazy. Yeah, that doesn't happen here. So, and when you think of it, the other thing too is there's people that live in apartments and that don't have yards, apartments, condos, or townhouses as we call them here. And so it is really nice for them to be able to go to a place and be able to just let their dogs be off leash. Because, I mean, really, leashes are not natural for dogs, and being able to just let them have some freedom off leash is really nice. There are ways to mitigate that if you don't have a dog park near you and you live in an apartment. There's a lot of ways to kind of mitigate that, but still, I mean, it does serve that purpose for owners. The dog parks do. So we have that's under the good. And of course, dog parks can provide that great mental stimulation in regards to lots of smelling and opportunities to sniff, hear, see, and hear different sights and sounds. Those really do come from the larger areas that have a little bit of wilderness. I'll say wilderness, but a lot of growth happening in there. So they do have the opportunity for more smells. Obviously, from the other dogs, they have that as well. And just different sights and sounds depending on where some of these dog parks are. Some dog parks are actually on beaches. Some dog parks are, like I say, on kind of wilderness trails, and that's really, really cool. So, dog parks can become kind of a social community for both owner and dog, where, they do become well acquainted with each other. You might make a friend who goes there at the same time of day, and both your dogs get along really nice. And I think that's a really cool thing. So dog parks can provide a setting for families to play, although that is not happening anymore. Just I think because some dog parks are just not big enough. It can be a great place for families to practice some recall games, and like I say, if you're going to ones that have open spaces, you can play hide and seek and that kind of stuff. Um, but is it really a good place to socialize your dog? Which I see a lot of owners talking. I kind of snoop into some dog groups. I get a little bit scared about what owners think the norm is, and without thinking, I'll read that. Am I gonna be able to read it? I actually have a friend that's Swedish. Maybe she can translate it for me. I can see if I can get it translated. Um, so, you know, um, is it a good place to socialize your dog? Kind of depends, and I'm going to lean towards no. It shouldn't be your only source of socialization. If your dog is not socialized at all, it's not something that you want to add to your list at in the beginning. Um, so, the dog park is a great opportunity for dogs to interact for those dogs that maybe might not do so well on leash. Some dogs pull and stuff. Sometimes dogs, they just get frustrated on a leash, so they do better if you can take the leash off and they can play with each other. It's not a place to socialize your puppy. The other thing that you want to be aware before, and this is something I do see a lot with working with clients, um, that we really want to be aware of body language and become more aware, um, because the more we know, the better we can do for our dogs. So I think as a dog owner, we should be learning more about their body language. And we want to be able to start seeing signs of being uncomfortable. A lot of times, what owners see is too far gone. When they see their dogs becoming uncomfortable, there's often little signs before it gets too out of control. I'll use that word. And before reactivity starts. So being dog aware is really helpful. You can learn Lily Chin. She is an artist, but she's done a lot of posters on different dog stuff, but she has a really cool dog language handout that you can download. I like to give it to clients so that they can learn more. It's really cool. Owners get really psyched. I had one client that posted it at two areas in their home. Or actually, I had a couple of clients that have posted it, just so that whole family can look at it and learn from it, which I think is really, really cool. Because I think it behooves us to learn more about dogs that we're living with, a different species, right? Can you go out? Yeah, so I don't live near the woods, and probably in the country you can. We have a lot of open spaces, so if you do live in the country and you're not really in a town area or anything like that, we have a couple of woods areas, but they kind of fall under the municipality of being under the leash law. So I'm just thinking, I did live in an area where there were a lot of woods and probably some spaces I could have legally taken my dogs off leash because everything falls within a municipality but pretty far from town, so I'm not sure I'd want to because we'd be very close to wildlife like bears and cougars and that kind of stuff, so I wouldn't want my dog picking up a scent and trying to decide what cool things there are to chase. The bad thing about dog parks is often there are a lot of dog owners that believe that dog parks are ideal locations to socialize their puppies. And that is so not what we want to do. It's not something I recommend. If a client asks me, I tell them absolutely not. And if you want further confirmation, you can ask your veterinarian, because they'll tell you from a medical standpoint that, it's not a good idea to do that. There is no control over the health of the dogs that are being brought into the dog park. There's nobody standing there looking for vaccine records. And if you have a puppy, your young dog's immune system may just not be ready for that kind of exposure. And even the stimulation, if you think about it, and what you want to keep in mind is, even if it's good stimulation, it's still overstimulation and is taxing on the immune system as well. So bears are cool to chase. Yeah, no, Henrik. And especially if you have dog treats on you, because bears can smell. Yeah, for sure, I can, Kelly. Bears can smell like 6 miles away. So, yeah, you have to be careful. Like I say, in the wild, they will come hunt you down if you're carrying food on you. So, I will say, I have followed bears where I grew up, but anyways, you want to be careful about that. So, yeah, Kelly, I will post the link for the language poster in the group when we're done, and you can have a look at it. So that's great. So, like I say, from a behavior standpoint, I already talked about the medical. You want to be careful. I hear a lot of reports of dogs getting kennel cough from dog parks, so there is that. And like I say, even, if it appears that it's good stimulation, it is taxing on the immune system, so we want to be careful. From a behavior standpoint, taking a puppy into dog park can be really, really risky due to a lot of under-socialized dogs visiting the park, or dogs who just are not appropriate in those situations where they may be getting overstimulated and their play style is crazy. There are breeds that, a lot of different breeds have different play styles, and you want to be careful about that. There are some breeds that they are, slammers, and that is how they play, and that's fine if they get together with their own breed. So it can traumatize a dog. And, you may have a lot of, dogs, like I say, that are under socialized and don't know how to play nice. They may act very Tarzanish. I'll use that word. It's one of my mentors used to like using that word, but and that can, that is not kosher. It's not cool. So you don't want to take a new puppy or even a newly adopted dog with unknown dogs until they've had a lot of good experiences with known dogs. And even then, I caution the dog parks. So, owners can misinterpret their dog's body language. I see it all the time. And sometimes owners will tend to congregate in groups. And that's, because, like I say, it does become a social aspect, but that's not always, healthy, because then they're not monitoring their dogs. Or, I see a lot of bad advice being given to owners on a lot of groups and on the Google machine, I call it. But also, bad advice like let them work it out. That is bad advice, because that is not, you're making a very blanket statement. And that can be, you want to be careful about that. It can lead to dangerous interactions. So you don't want to use dog parks as the only form of exercise for your dog as well, especially if they're always becoming overstimulated at every visit. Then they're not learning the right thing. So, and as I said, some dogs can bully other dogs. They can be sick from other dogs, like kennel cough is a big one. Kennel cough is definitely has morphed into a lot of different, just like our flu, it changes all the time. And some dog parks don't have separate areas, although many of them are starting to do that for different sized dogs. which is cool. But unfortunately, sometimes the smaller dog area is made too small, which is like, whoa. Um, anyway, and some larger dog types like to bully smaller dogs or worse. There is something called predatory drift. It is real, and if you have a large dog and a small dog, especially if they're more than half the size of the other dog, it could spark um, you know very bad altercation. It's called predatory drift, where um, I won't get into specifics, but some things can happen where the larger dog's brain just kind of a switch goes and starts going into predatory mode, and not, that it's another dog is kind of blocked out. So, and like I say, certain dog parks are just not big enough. Or sometimes they just get too busy for the number of dogs that are happening, which again increases the likelihood of stress. And, which one to keep in mind too is, have you ever been to a party that's just too crowded? It's like, yuck. Yeah, so it's going to increase the likelihood of stress, which can result in fights. And like I say, for me, I want to see a dog park where dogs are moving and flowing, and not just playing. There can be play is fun and cool, but it can be sometimes a little bit more than is appropriate. So, and the ugly, like I say, my article was called The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. And some dogs just really do not belong in dog parks. They have short fuses. They can do a lot of damage physically and emotionally to other dogs. Having your dog exposed to too many dogs who do not know how to play appropriately can cause your dog concern and can lead your dog to becoming dog aggressive. Yes, dog parks can make dogs dog aggressive just because of those factors. Dogs do and can become injured, as the picture I showed you. It is actually from a dog owner in close to my area. That happened, and initially she didn't realize that there was actually injury until she got home. So, if you're taking your dog there and it's not really under your control, or as I say, some dogs get overstimulated, and that's when bites can happen. Sometimes people have been knocked to the ground by out of control dogs. That has happened to me, where a dog was so out of control, the owner could not gain control and was running around. I mean, he thought he was he was having fun, but he wasn't under control. He was running really close. He ran so close to the back of my legs that I fell onto my butt. He got so close to behind my knees that they buckled and I fell, and that was not fun, I gotta tell you. I needed a lot of chiropractic adjustments after that. And under Canadian law, dog owners are responsible for the actions of their dogs, regardless of the location. So you want to be careful about that. And many dogs can feel intimidated when there's too many dogs grouping together, which leads to fights and injuries. And like I say, you want to look at movement, keep things less intimidating, and allow for dogs to move away. Again, if you don't have control over your dog, you want to think twice about going to a dog park where your dog might be overstimulated and you can't gain control. You might need more training before you go to a place like that. For dog parks where, there is movement, is there enough opportunity to move, stop and sniff and keep moving? If they aren't interested in interacting with other dogs. And taking your dog to a dog park does not mean they have to interact with another dog. We used to go to a dog trail that was really cool. My dogs were friendly with other dogs, they were okay, but it was a trail. They enjoyed the stimulation of all the other dogs on this. It was a off leash area. There was a grass area, so if some dogs wanted to play, they could. They just love the stimulation. They love to stop and sniff a butt to say hi, but that's it. And they kept going, and they had that opportunity, and they got to smell a lot. And there were a lot of park benches there that owners would sit and eat something. So my one dog always had to stop at every park bench because there might be something that fell. So, that we don't have any like that where I live. I think there's one that's bigger where there's a little bit more movement in my area, which is really, really cool. And something, if you are going to a dog park, you kind of want to watch before you enter. Have a look at what kind of dogs are inside. Observe their behaviors, if there's other dogs, and see how they're interacting with each other. That will give you enough information to see if, it's like maybe this isn't a good time. Watch the owners to see if they have control over their dogs. If you see something that makes you uncomfortable, don't go in. If there's anything inside a dog park and there's anything that makes you look uncomfortable to you, then leave. Okay? And again, do not expect dog parks to socialize your puppies or socialize your new dog that has no dog-dog experience or is reactive to other dogs. This is not how you cure that. That's something that you need to work on with a professional. Do not take your dog to the dog park when he is not feeling well. Okay? And of course, you always want to take litter bags so that you can pick up after your dogs. There is nobody that is their job to walk into the dog park and pick up your dog's poop. I have seen this in some areas where people actually thought that city staff came to pick up your dog's poop. Like I say, my favorite type of dog park is those that have really big open spaces and allow for movement and have legal off-leash trails. I do love to see my dogs having the opportunity for off-leash time. It's healthy for them. I've seen dogs who are not given the opportunity for some off-leash, or even you can use a lunge line to mimic the off-leash. I actually had a dog where I had to do some strict leash walking due to an injury, and she gained weight. I didn't feed her anymore, but she gained weight because she wasn't getting that that opportunity to have a little bit more freedom of movement, a little bit of trotting and such, which, long lines happen, and we did happen to live in an area where we had a lot of legal off-leash trails too, so we were lucky that way. So yeah, and some dogs just don't care. They don't want to be in a dog park. They're not there to play. I know I've taken my dogs who are perfectly fine with their dogs and walked them into a dog park, and they go like, yeah, what? So like, why are we here? So, take your cue from your dog as well. So I hope I've given you a lot of good things to think about. If you have any questions about that, let me know. Like I say, the picture I posted with the dog who was injured, this did happen at a dog park, and please let me know if you have any questions. Doggy daycares are similar but different, and I won't go there today. They're not something that I'm a fan of either. Not to say there are some really well-run doggy daycares, but they're far and few between because the pet business has exploded. It's unregulated, and there's a lot of people who are untrained, starting businesses, training behavior, and daycares and such that actually don't understand dogs. So, but yeah, so those are things to think about if you want to go to a dog park. If you rather not, you know what? You can buy really long lunge lines and give your dog some freedom. That way you can go to a quiet park and just give them extra freedom that way. You know, but like the dog park can provide certain ticks or certain boxes. But, you know, if you have friends with dogs and if your goal is for your dog to be able to play with another dog, not all dogs really care about that. And that's something to consider. But, you know, finding, you know, maybe you have a friend that has a dog and they can become friends and they can become playmates. So that addresses that need. Yeah, so like I say, I'm seeing a lot of people who think they need to take their dog to a dog park, and it's not a need. Um, you know, it depends, and that really is when we're looking at behavior and beings and circumstances and environments and behavior. It does really depends. My guy likes to jump at other dogs or try to get on their backs for dominance. So that isn't dominance. That is a very misused terms. So he's 8 months old, so he is rehearsing behavior. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. And he should not be going to a dog park because he is learning that this is okay. He's jumping at other dogs and getting on their backs because he's overstimulated, and he may have a very different play style depending on his breed, as well as being an adolescent who are really mentally not in the right headspace sometimes and can get overstimulated. So yeah, so so don't look at that as dominance. That's not dominance. Is you know, family units that want to have specific resources. So it's a really misused term. So I'm hearing, Kelly, that your dog is just getting overstimulated, doesn't know how to play nice, and that is a skill that we can teach dogs. Dog parks are not the best place if we don't have, you know, participants that are willing to play the same thing. If you want your dog to learn how to play nicely, you have to give them very small pieces of play, no more than a minute, and then you need to teach them how to come off and calm themselves down, because that's all I'm hearing, overstimulation that's happening there. And yep, you got it right, because he's an 8-month-old puppy. Needs training. Yeah, in regards to being able to have control over him at the dog park for sure. But I would say an 8-month-old puppy is not, that's not the right place for an 8-month-old puppy. They're learning the wrong stuff. Can I talk about all the stuff they're selling to dog owners like toys? What is needed and dangerous for dogs someday? Yeah, sure, I can. I think I've talked about enrichment toys. I can do a chat about that if yeah, I can definitely do that. As far as a topic, I did do my enrichment challenge in June, March, April, May, I don't know. It is in the group where I did 4 days, 3 different activities, and used household items, so that without buying anything special. More about dog clothes and etc. Okay. I don't like dog clothes, but anyway, I'm not a furry owner, so yeah, my dogs wear sweaters if it's really cold, and depends on which dog actually wears it. So one of my dogs has such a heavy coat, she really doesn't need it. Yeah, Kelly, no problem. If you have any more questions about that, post them, and I'm happy to answer a little bit more. I think your dog needs a friend. So I don't know if any of your friends have a dog that's similar in age. So that is also something to think about, is having age appropriate dogs interacting with each other. Adult dogs really don't, like real adult dogs, I'm talking 3, 4, 5 year olds, they really don't care for teenage dogs because they're just, to them, they're just little twerps. So they don't really like that. So that's another thing to think about too, is if there's some adults at the dog park and they think that teenage dog over there is a little twerp, they may get a little rough with them if they're being, if their play style is not nice. And you want to also consider if your dog isn't acting appropriately, that, what it's doing to the other dog as well. So, okay, more about dog clothes. Okay, dog clothes are not my thing, but I can talk about it. We do have a lot of people here, especially in Canada, liking, for the winter time. Some owners think that their dogs are cold, and definitely some dogs do get cold, so it depends on the dog. And, there is a way to climatize our dogs to wearing clothes. So, yeah, I can talk about that if you would like. So, it is past the half hour. And if you're watching this on replay, hashtag replay. So I know that you watched it. And if you have any questions about this, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And if you have any questions or insights, or if you disagree with some of the things that I have talked about, like I say, this was from my experience as a dog owner, and also speaking as a professional, looking at things from environment, learning, and behavior aspect, and genetic as well, and health. So rolling all those into one. So everybody have a great evening. Stay safe and love your dog. See you next week.